Chapter 14. And he also more recently, in the last couple of years, founded Diag.net, Diagnostic Network, doing a fantastic job. Hopefully he'll tell us a little bit about that. But he is here today specifically to do some coverage on ADAS and some tools and equipment. So help me in welcoming Scott Brown.
Thank you, Carolyn. All right, we're going to do a tool and equipment update. This is fresh information right from Apex SEMA. I was just there all last week. I'm going to share as much information as I have. What you're going to see here is that there are a lot of players now coming into the marketplace with these ADAS solutions. A lot of them are just now getting into the marketplace. There's one company that's already been out there and they're kind of ahead of the game. So we'll walk through this. This is a picture, and this is what Hunter Engineering has mocked up on what the possibilities might be if you're doing all the different cars out there, which not all of us are working on every single car. So we need to be conscious of that. But you can see how complicated this setup is. And if you don't have a lot of space, you're going to disqualify yourself from actually doing this kind of service. But what I'm hoping here is that we can leave this meeting with a higher level of awareness or a desire to gain deeper understanding of what's happening with these systems. So like I said, I just came back from Apex SEMA, and these are the systems that are pretty much entering the marketplace now, or are available or will be available sometime in the near future. So we've got Autel. They are the first aftermarket company out there with a fairly comprehensive solution. They may claim that they do 90% of the vehicles out there, but they probably only do about 75% of the percentage they claim. So you're always going to find some limitation somewhere. You've got Bosch. Bosch, by the way, they have a solution, but they have an exclusive with Safelite. Anybody here dealing with Safelite? Yeah. So they've got a solution out there that's pretty comprehensive, but they can't sell it to anybody. So they have a new system. They just debuted it at Apex. It's not going to be ready until Q2 of next year. The end of Q2 is what they estimated. We've got CAS of New England, which is OEMtools.com. They have a relationship with G-Scan, which is a Korean scan tool development company that actually is OEM for Hyundai Kia. They've also got a relationship with the glass manufacturer Pilkington, which we'll walk through. We've got Launch. They just came to the market with their offering. I'm not even sure if it's in their catalog yet, but they had one there at Apex. We've got Texa. That's a European company, a very conservative company. It looks like they have a very comprehensive setup, especially for European vehicles. They're just now coming into the U.S. and going to enter the market. And then Snap-on. They call it Total Service Solutions because it's branded under Snap-on and all these other brands. And I learned from somebody there at the show that they don't want to brand it as Snap-on because I think there's another tier of markup that has to take place. So it's just the world that we live in. That picture, by the way, this was taken over at SEMA, and you guys recognize this piece of equipment back here?
That's my machine.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that. They've got some integration there with the Autel unit. So the Autel system. How many here are familiar with the Autel setup today? Okay. What do you notice about this one? You know what that one is?
That's the mobile one.
That's a new MA600, I think they call that. They have an existing system, which we'll see, which we saw earlier. We'll go into that, but all the targets are completely different. So you can't take the targets from the old system and move them into the new system. This is primarily, the targets are primarily for cameras, no radar solutions. Although they said that they were going to come up with some add-ons to go with this kit to satisfy radar. But like you said, it is a mobile solution. This thing folds up really nicely and it's well made. I got a demo when I was back in Pennsylvania a few weeks ago, and they had a unit there and they were showing me how it all set up. And the hardware, I mean, everything is first class. And the biggest challenge here when you're looking at setting up for this camera calibration is the setup itself. And you can go to the OEM service information and look up what's needed. And I've got a slide in here, they show you just print up a white piece of paper and print up a black piece of paper and start gluing them together. And they'll tell you where to put them. And you just hit a button in the scan tool and you calibrate. These tools are designed to make the job a lot easier, right? They streamline the whole operation to bring all the service information into a workflow that makes you very, very efficient in getting that job done. And the other really cool thing here is that, think about the setup. If you're on the alignment rack, you know, that's a flat plane. It's already, you've done the alignment, the thrust line, everything's all centered. And if the next step is to roll right in and hit a button to move your target to where it belongs, and then you hit calibrate, you're working very, very efficiently. So this whole operation here, I was very impressed. Nobody gave me a complete demo on it. It was a little hodgepodgey here. I think they just put this thing together very, very quickly. But down at the end of this is the Autel system. Hunter adds their own camera, and the camera basically is looking at the same target that is used for the alignment. So think about when you do the wheel alignment, you're doing a run out, right, to compensate for run out in the wheel. The target system that is on any system out there that you just put on, you're not doing any run out. So there could be some fuzziness. Okay. I don't want to update. So there's the piece here, and when I say hodgepodge, this conduit here, you should have seen the wires that were hanging out. They weren't terminated very well. They're just hanging there. They wouldn't survive in a production environment. So I think they put it together right there on the floor, and they said, "Don't touch it." Right. All right, this is the Bosch system. Now this I was pretty impressed with, because think about the storage that you're going to need. You know, when we have an Autel set up in our shop, I'm working with AES Wave on it, and when this thing showed up, it was a pallet stacked about this tall. And I started disassembling all this stuff. I'm going, where am I going to put all this stuff? There was no storage for it. So you can see what these guys have done. This coffin here opens up and everything's nicely stored. They've got labels in there to let you know where everything's at. They've done a really good job. The really cool thing here that I learned, through my demo, is that this whole frame is actually holding the target system. Okay. And right now they don't have the software done, so this is like a production or a development setup. They've got two live cameras that are actually looking at the targets, and then there's some data at the top that helps you move this thing and set it perfectly centered to the vehicle and at the right distance. And this is where all the setup is. If you've done how many guys have done a camera calibration using a calibration frame? You see how much time it takes to set all that up, right? You're drawing a box around the car. You've got to get the target exactly at the right spot. Is this cutting out? Check. Okay. And then you hit the button, and then you're good. But when it doesn't work, usually you got to go back and you're checking all your numbers again. Somebody didn't measure right. You've got to set it up. So I really like this. The other thing is that this gives you two options. Okay, they can index the distance of the back wheels with the targets, but the center line is of the vehicle. And they've got a sensor camera in there that basically looks at the vehicle. It may have you open up the trunk or the deck lid, and it's drawing a virtual line to know where the center line is. Whereas the manufacturer may have you drop a plumb bob from the front emblem, back emblem, mark the floor, shoot a laser, or draw a string, or what have you. So think about how much time you can save by doing that. Yes, sir.
Is the Bosch also using the alignment rack for, so you've already done thrust angles, so?
No, this isn't part of their aligner. This is just a standalone system. And there was no literature available for
So
this.
but you already have to have, the thrust angle has to be at 0.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the manufacturers are all over the board. If you start looking at service information, I would say it's safe to assume that the thrust line should be 0. Some of them don't state that, but the thrust should be 0, because then you're facing the center line of the vehicle. But this is just helping you set it up in a much more efficient manner. This is a picture of that screen, so you can see the rotation. You've got rotation, you've got the offset, you've got the distance, and then the required distance. So you see it's 2,000 millimeters required. You're at 2010, and you see it's in green. So I think you're within the tolerance there. But all you got to do is you're just standing there holding the whole cabinet and just moving it until everything's 0. And then you drop these 2 arms that basically lock it to the floor. And then you go and set up the distance, or the height distance and all that, and then you're all set.
So how much floor space do you need?
Yeah.
It depends on what the manufacturer requires. So what do you
As
work
much
on?
as 40 feet, right?
What cars are you working
No,
on?
I'm not working on any. I'm an instructor, so I heard something like 3,000 square feet of space in order to aim.
We mapped out what would be needed for a Ford quad cab truck, the longest wheelbase, because they require, worst case. And I believe it was about 40 feet
That's right.
by 25 feet or something like that. And that's for floor targets.
Yeah.
And that's really just for the all-around view camera to sync that all up. You do, on some applications like Honda will require a certain distance for like the radar reflector. But during that process, you're asked to take that radar reflector out, and it wants to do a clean sample, so it has a baseline of what the noise is. You don't want a brake lathe or a big piece of equipment or something like that. So if you've got limited distance, then you're gonna disqualify yourself from actually doing that calibration process.
So the facility actually should be a standalone facility.
Yeah, Longo Toyota, I just found out a couple weeks ago, I was at the CAT conference, and one of the ex-instructors who used to work for Toyota, he told me that Longo Toyota has 2 bays they're like a little alley. They've got them dedicated just to the ADAS stuff. And I'm thinking, my gosh, that's a lot of wasted space, because I'm sure they're not doing ADAS 24/7, right? So,
Not yet.
yeah, not yet, so.
But, some of the ADAS calibrations take a while. I mean, it's not like,
Oh, yeah.
you just don't set it up and do it in 5 minutes. It can take a whole long time.
Yeah, I mean, depends on the manufacturer, so.
And the year of the vehicle and stuff like that.
Yeah, if it's a domestic vehicle, like a GM car, they've simplified the operation. Most of that is all dynamic.
I had an acquaintance, we set it up for a BMW, and he had to go to a collision repair center, and they needed a 40 by 20 foot square to calibrate.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, sir.
Are we doing much with the radars yet? You said you got cameras, but what about the
Yeah,
radars?
yeah, radars, well, the frames are set up with the reflective, whatever the manufacturer requirement is. There could be a trihedral little reflector that you put in a certain position. Sometimes the frame is needed for the plate or the piece, or sometimes it's just a small little stand with a little reflector.
And is most of these companies doing with radar?
So you saw that Autel unit? The first Autel unit with the portable stand doesn't have any of the radar stuff, so it's not a radar solution.
How about the one with the Hunter?
The Hunter is basically the early version of the Autel, which has all this stuff. It has all the radar stuff. So for the radar, so say that you're calibrating a blind spot, that alignment machine and all that configuration really doesn't help you. You still have to go do you have to measure out and find out what that degree is. You're still gonna draw a straight line out. You're gonna measure over so that it's at the right angle off the rear of the vehicle. Again, it's all set up.
Will it work off the system, like if you went in with the 100, would you have to,
Yeah, in the Ontel system, they actually have a compensation. They ask you if it's sitting on the level floor or if it's off of the lift. And then you just input that distance that you have it off the ground, and it'll compensate for it.
A wall or something, it's not the 20 desired feet, then you're registered.
Yeah, and I have a picture of my shop, and I'll show you just what you're asking there. This is G-Scan, this is Cast of New England. Fresh batteries. Thank you. These guys are mainly OEM tools, but they're working with G-Scan. This is that Korean company. They've got a fairly comprehensive setup for the Pilkington company. And that Pilkington is an OEM glass manufacturer. You guys have probably seen the brand name in the glass. They've got this little handheld unit, and it's primarily for glass replacement. So typically when you're replacing glass, you're doing camera calibration, not doing any radar stuff. So it's just a solution for that. So these guys do have, if you want to get into this, you can get their solution, and then they've got some OEM kits that they put together based off of the vehicle fleet that you want to service. This is the launch setup. This is basically what they had on the show floor at Apex. When I was there, they didn't have the only guy that knew anything about this. He wasn't there. So they kind of just walked me around it a little bit, but you see it's got the frame, it's got all the elements. Again, when you start looking at this stuff, first you're going to need to sample your fleet. You need to figure a business case for this and see whether or not you actually need to do this kind of work, and whether the frame's going to help you or not. Okay. I mentioned the storage. This is really nice here because they have a nice storage piece for it. So it makes it so when you are not using it, you have a place to put your stuff away nicely.
Did they talk about the cost of what these?
They're all going to be about 20 grand.
Yeah.
Somewhere 20 to 30 grand. You're probably going to be all in on. You will notice that they do have a nice separation of these targets, so they're not laying on top of each other. You're going to see a couple pictures here shortly of another manufacturer that didn't think about that. They're just laying on top of each other. So you can imagine what might happen when it gets thrown back in there every time, and then you've got nice scratches and everything else. Yes, sir.
Scott, the 20 grand you just mentioned, is that usually inclusive of the scan tool, or is that separate?
Yeah, usually the scan tool, that's what makes it more efficient. So the scan tool basically has all the operation instructions to help guide the service tech through all
So
the
that would be inclusive.
Yes. Yeah, and you're gonna probably find other things that you need to add some efficiency, like some plumb bobs, some laser measurement tools. Some of them are now coming with laser measurement tools. This is a Texas company. So this is a European company. Rob is familiar with them, right? This is their frame. When I was looking at their frame, you know, first I looked at it and I said, wow, that looks pretty good. But then I started looking at some of the hardware and the fasteners, and I thought, boy, this isn't very well, it isn't ruggedized the way that I would assume a piece of equipment would be.
employee proof?
However, their software, the guy gave me a run through on their software, very comprehensive. I mean, it told a story, it told it in a very efficient way where a technician is not gonna get drowned out in, you know, procedures, but it walks them through it. It gives the technician a better perspective on exactly why am I here, why am I doing this, how to do it, and so on. You'll see that, you know, they're showing a dimension from the center line of this wheel to the frame. The Autel system, I can tell you that I've seen some of their graphics and they're misleading. They show you that it's measuring to the nose of the car in the picture, but the instructions and text say to the center of the wheel. And And we've caught ourselves measuring to the front of the car and setting it all up and it won't work. So, graphics, sometimes we like to look at pictures and just go off of that, right? It should be intuitive like that, right? But it's misleading sometimes, right?
Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out, yeah. Yeah, the guy even sent me, I asked him, I said, hey, do you have any rich content to send me? He sent me some nice clean screenshots, so that's pretty nice. Shows you what the dimension is right here, 1,500 millimeters. And here's the other thing. You may want to think about how you're going to report this. So everybody, when they do a wheel alignment, typically you're printing out the wheel alignment, right? You want to attach it, do the before and after. You've got a time and date stamp. I was here, I did this is where the car left. Think about that process, because here, this is pushing out a really nice report, letting you know what was done, where the measurements were. In the Autel system, what we're doing today, we're screenshotting along the way. And so we have to bam, 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 make a bunch of screenshots, and then you have to go afterwards and collect the data, stick it in the ticket. So
What about the Bosch one?
Bosch, the software's not done yet. So there's hopefully, yeah, this is all, you know, super, super new.
Well, the problem is, you know, if you're a body shop, you gotta attach that to the CCC, and
Yeah,
otherwise, you know, and some whore get a hold of you, you're ripped.
right,
You shouldn't be even doing it without documentation.
right.
It's just-
Yeah, you need to document it. You know, we were here, we did it, we set it up. This is the Snap-on one. I don't know if you guys, anybody been to the Snap-on website that shows this new setup? They really did a nice job on their website to explain, you know, what they're doing. I was impressed. Very nice, nice setup. You can tell that they did a lot of homework on how to draw a box around the car, how to streamline that whole operation. But that's your frame. This is your frame for your targets. The targets are, you know, they can slide back and forth. You've got a centering mechanism down here for reflecting the beam that comes up from the front. You've got additional lasers that come out the side to help you square it up. This is that stand for the corner reflector for your radar. This looks exactly like the factory Toyota unit. The other really cool thing, and I'm hoping I can get my hands on this, is that they've got this nice book here that has, they've laid this out nicely. I mean, I was looking at that, I'm going, wow, that is a nice book. They've documented the heck out of that
What's
thing.
the over-the-air updates for the?
Yeah, no over-the-air updates for that printed piece of paper. Again, remember what Fred was saying, these are all neural network-based systems, so what you know today and the way they get calibrated today may not exist tomorrow or next year or whatever.
Does the Modus do the calibration? Do they calibrate through the Modus?
They have,
This
I
would use
believe
Modus.
it's gonna work through the
So the
Modus.
Modus will have a,
Yeah, they'll have a software update that they add the ADAS function in, and I'm sure it'll be a free update.
Does this one fall in at 20 to 40, rather the, $20 to $30,000 range?
Yeah, they told me it was about 25 grand for this setup, but, you know, that's probably, there's some pluses to be added in, so,
you know,
yes, sir.
when I went by their booth, they said they just set it up and no one knew a thing about it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's been happening here. Here's the other thing to make note of. These trihedral reflectors, so those are to return that radar sample. The manufacturer has a set distance of height that you square that up to the sensor, and then it's looking for an offset so you can set it up. You'll see there's 3 different sizes that come with this kit to cover all the requirements that they found. You'll find that with the Autel unit, they give you one. It's one big, large one. The other thing, and I'm not a radar expert, but I did talk to a few people about this. This is aluminum and a specific thickness. The Autel unit is a steel one. So what does it think about what that's doing to the radar return when they're doing a sample? I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, or I'm not sure.
When I was listening to the Autel guy, he said that they do email the information to your, to the computer. computer so you can drag it on the invoice.
Yeah, you can do a report, but
He's
a
talking
lot of
about
times,
accuracy, right?
a lot,
Different.
yeah, we're talking about two different
Yeah.
things here right now, but you're talking about the report, the
Yeah.
reporting thing, yeah, okay.
Because it's insurance companies,
Yeah,
that's what we're trying
Because
to
you're talking
make
about the
happen.
different materials.
right, I'm talking about the different materials, but just to go back, when I'm doing a screenshot, because it's showing the offset, a lot of times that report doesn't show that, it just says that this process was done, it doesn't say what the offset was.
What, before and after.
What it was before and after, right? And again, this is a part of the storage piece here, this is the shelving in the back. In the front there, those are the targets, and I think, yeah, I've got a picture of that. See the targets? They're all laying on top of each other. So, I don't think a lot of thought went into the storage element and what the workshop environment's gonna be.
Well, I guess the question is what's on the back of those, and then can it scratch them?
Yeah.
Well,
They're usually metal.
these sharp edges, they're
No,
sharp
no,
edges.
yeah, there's nothing on the back, it's just a metal back, right?
Yeah, just a metal back.
Yeah.
Actually, these have the sticker. See, this is the manufacturer of the raw material out there. So those stickers haven't even been pulled off yet.
Okay.
So,
A few pool noodles cut in half.
what's that?
A few pool noodles cut in half.
Yeah. All right, so that's a Snap-on unit. All right, so here's the summary, and this is my shop here. The way that our alignment rack, we put our alignment rack in 10 years ago, not thinking, or this is, no, 14 years ago, not thinking about these cameras or any of these systems, right? Nobody was, but I'm limited up here on this depth here. So if I try to update my alignment machine, and by the way, this system here, this is not the Hawkeye system, so that basically takes me out of the requirements for that system, so I'd have to do a lot of updating. If you're buying a brand new Snap-on, or I'm sorry, a Hunter setup,
We got ours last year.
yeah, within the last 4 or 5 years probably, you're gonna be eligible to do this. But they've got the update kit, that's the Autel setup right there. So they would just add in those cameras, a little harness, and it would add some efficiency on your setup. But the summary here, you need to start sampling your fleet, seeing what the demand might likely be. If you really want to know what's going to be required, go to the service information for that car, make up a repair. Go in there and do a keyword search for camera and look at what the requirements are. Do a keyword search for the radar, look and see what the requirements are.
Scott, does
You'll
that
be
old
amazed.
sun machine work back there?
It does, barely. Here's service information. This is the OEM service information for a Nissan. And they tell you, take 3 sheets of black paper and 3 sheets of white paper together to make a target of 360 millimeters, okay? Here you go. They're 120 millimeters square. You can make your own target, right? So you hear a lot of hype out there over use the OEM target. So I don't know does the OEM specify what kind of paper you're printing on? So,
Where do you get the black sheet?
but they give you some notes here. Use transparent tape, never apply tape to the target surface, never allow clearance, So it's fairly simple. All right, any questions about hardware? I've got a couple case studies I want to go
Scott,
through.
what about like
Yes, sir.
the last team weekend, they had a Land Rover sitting out there from that demo and said that it would do it with a GPS. It didn't need all this. Is
Right.
that gonna be, this is just gonna be a temporary, then all of a sudden everybody's gonna go that way and then all this will be wasted?
If I could tell the future, I wouldn't be doing this job right now. No, they will probably go to more. In my opinion, I believe a lot of these features have been moved into the marketplace without a deep thought on
Yeah.
what the service impact is. These are items that help to sell cars, right? So that was the job one. Forget the guys in the service department. Right?
Okay.
So that's what we're dealing with right now. So we're going to be in a weird period, and these cars, the average age of a car is 12 years. These cars will last 20 years, so they're going to be out in the marketplace. I don't know why this keeps dropping out, but
You wanna try another one?
those cars are going to be in the marketplace, so they're going to need service for a while. Yes, sir.
From what I've seen from fixing the body shop cars, what little I've seen, you're gonna need to add a lot of sheet metal screws and washers to your estimate.
To put the stuff back together properly?
Well,
is that
yeah,
what
a
you're
lot
saying?
of the body shops are putting on panels that are from a different year that don't have the mounting, so they just screw the sensor on and stuff, but they want the car out. So,
Yeah,
you
good
know.
point. We had an incident happen the other day, so Carolyn talked about diagnostic network, and I'll just talk about this for a second.
Okay.
A guy texted me while I was at Apex. He works at a Subaru dealer, and he's always under high scrutiny. Their corporate is looking at his activity. And he goes, hey, I got an awesome case study on a Subaru job. The car rolled, they put a new roof on it, new windshield, and they brought it to him to calibrate, which he does calibrations all the time. And that has the eyesight system, so it has two, just like we do as humans, have two cameras.
Yeah.
He's trying to do it, and it keeps failing, it won't do it. So he starts investigating, he pulls down a plastic cover, and he looks and he sees the fasteners don't look quite right, all right? So he takes the fasteners out and he finds out, oh my gosh, the framing had nutserts added to it, okay? So he's looking at it, and I mean, the thing was just, it was ugly. So he had his parts department look, there's two different roofs for that car, one with eyesight, one without. So the body shop put the wrong roof on the car, they put the nutserts in, and then they try to get it going. So anyways, he posted this case study out. We had to pull it down. He got pressed on it. And you're broadcasting this right now? You can tell the rest of the story then. Okay. Sorry. We'll talk about it at the bar, okay? All right, here's a case study. This is kind of unique. I took one of my techs back in April to North Carolina to a 2-day ADAS training course at Mobile Tech. A guy named David Friend, he was putting on, this was the second one of these he's done. I think he's done 4 or 5 now. And so we were all asked to rent high-featured vehicles. So we fly into Charlotte because I was at another event that next week. So Charlotte, we drive all the way out to Wilmington, which is about 3 hours away. We're walking around the parking lot at National, and I see this Nissan here, and I go, wow, that's got ProPilot on it, we're gonna get it. So you'll see the ProPilot here. You probably have seen their commercials. They show how you push a button and the road turns blue and the car just does all this magic, right? So I'm going, cool, all right, man, we're gonna figure this stuff out as we're driving, right? So we're driving along, and this is the vehicle, 2019 Nissan Altima. It had 6,600 miles on it. Shouldn't be much wrong with this car, right? So we go driving. This is the video. This is us. We're actually in chauffeur type mode right now. So it's doing everything. This is just leaving the airport. We wanted to record some stuff just to see how we're doing. If it's stopped for too long, you have to hit the resume button to actually continue the following. It was working fine. We're driving along and it's doing everything like it should. And I'm growing more and more confident that, yeah, this thing's working just like it should. Now, it failed. It failed not when we were doing the recording, but we had an issue. This is what happens when it does fail. It'll pop up a sign that says front radar not available. And if you try to re-engage it, it actually shows you a message. And we'll go to the next screen here. That's what it looks like when it fails. And let me just back up for a second. So while we were driving it, after I gave it all that confidence, the traffic opens way up. It goes up to like 65, whatever my set speed was. We're cruising along for 10 minutes. Traffic starts to slow down. We're coming. This car is just going to pile right in the back.
Oh, man.
I climb on the brakes, and then we look at each other and go, wow, that was weird. What the hell? So we drove it a little bit further, and then this message popped up. So the system identified a problem. We pulled over. It says front radar blocked, right? We push the button. It shows you right there, forward. The forward piece does not work, okay? We pull over. We take a look. Couldn't find anything wrong. We thought maybe something blew on the front of the car or whatever. We turn it back on. It's all enabled again. Then we re-engaged it. It started working just fine. Pretty scary. So we get to the classroom and what do? Hey, I've got a problem vehicle. I want my team on this one because I want to figure this out. So we get the factory, we're using Consult. We go in there and this is what it says. Radar stained. You got to kind of read the word. Operator obstacle or blocked, right? So radar stain, that's probably a translation. So some technical Japanese, right? Radar stain, that means the radar got something on it, right? So we go to the service information and this is what it says. Here's the code, C1A16, the 3-byte DTC failure. In 97 it means when it's on the threshold, if any stain occurs to distance sensor body window, all right? But down here, if you read this, it says it may be detected under the following conditions and explain to the customer about the difference between the contamination detection function and the indication when a malfunction is detected and tell them this is not a malfunction. That's what it says. It's assuming that maybe snow or something gets on it, right, and blocks it temporarily and then it's going to go away. Right? That's from the manufacturer. So if you do the diagnosis on this thing, the tech may read this and go, oh, I'm not going to even worry. I'm not even going to try to diagnose it. I'm done. So.
Meanwhile, you've gone through the windshield.
Yeah. So when you are driving, and I took these pictures after we figured out how the system worked and what was going on. But when you're driving, look at that vehicle right there, kind of a higher profile vehicle. You can actually see the car. The car is being painted in the instrument cluster. This is 1 minute later. We're behind another car, but it's just a regular passenger car. And it's engaged right now. That sensor's bent back. We did a key cycle. It's bent back. It's working, but it doesn't see that car. This is what happened. Oh, here's the picture. We took this off. This is the first thing we saw. Pop this cover off. You see the radar sensor there? It's pointed up in the sky.
Good for planes.
Yeah, good for planes, right. So this is it here. We had a number of college instructors in this class, and I've had some other technicians. We were all looking at it, and we can see that this vehicle has been apart. It's been through a service event.
Yeah, because it didn't work the last time.
Went into collision. You can actually see there's rust under here, right there. So when I'm going, okay, what the heck is going on here? This is crazy. So any of you that know me, you know that I love photography. I love really good photography. And I'm going, we got to get a good picture of this stuff, right? One of the techs who works for Lucas Underwood, I don't know if you guys know who he is. He sent one of his techs. He was on our team, and I didn't know who he worked for. But the guys, I saw him pushing his phone down there, and he's holding it down there, and he's clicking. He goes, "Will this work?" And I look, and I go, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." Yeah. So this is a shot he got.
That bracket's bent.
The bracket is bent right there. Yeah. It's not supported at the top at all. So it's made to take a hit and go backward.
Yeah, for the bicycle.
So what we did, we're in test mode here. We went ahead and rolled it forward. We put on the level surface. We put that at 90 degrees, and we went and calibrated it. And we took it out and drove it.
And this is a rental car.
This is a rental car.
I hope you pushed it back before you gave it.
I did. I actually got a free rental. It was $500, and they refunded me.
Oh, wow.
Because I threw a bitch. And I talked to the general manager, and I'll just close this up. I called them up, and I told them what I'm doing, where I'm at. And I said, this car should not have been placed in service. They are lucky that somebody else wasn't driving the car and trusted it, and then it piled in the back of the car. So we did a lot of experimentation with this vehicle. So one of the other technicians had a Snap-on scan tool that really does a good job of graphing. The Consult does not do a very good job of recording and graphing, which is the OEM tool. So this it's kind of hard to see, but this is distance, and then this is the relative speed. So for the two objects, or the objects that you're following. this is what it bent. See how much hash there is? A lot of hash right there. This is actually driving it, and then this switch right here, that's when it went into failure mode, and it flagged the DTC. This is after we bent it forward and we did all the aiming and everything. We're driving it around pretty much the same road test route, same amount of cars and all that. Do you see this? There's still a lot of hash. I've tested a number of these since then, and it shouldn't have any of that hash, okay? So, I don't know if you saw in the first picture, it says do not drop.
Yeah.
Here's the picture right here, okay? Do not drop, these things are super delicate, all right? So we had another case study, a guy, one of the guys I know from Autologic posted up on Diagnostic Network, a case study on a 2019 BMW. He's helping his I think his cousin or brother-in-law, working at a BMW dealer to try to get this calibration on a radar done after it went through a collision event. And it would not calibrate, would not calibrate, would not calibrate. This thing was like $3,500. They finally pulled the trigger on it, and they got permission to cut the cover off of it. The cover looked fine, but it got smacked. It took such a hard shock. It actually dimpled this little shield here. But underneath this is all the chips, the IC chips are underneath that. But it smacked it so hard it probably broke something in the board.
Yeah, you know the rest of that's the radar array, the little printed circuit things.
Yeah, these guys
That's
here.
the antenna array for the radar.
So some of these are sending and then receiving, right? Is that
Yeah,
how that works?
they're probably both, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so none of this stuff is.
No, but if you just break one of those wires, it could screw you up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at here is that if you get a car in that you're asked to do a calibration when it went through a wreck, and it doesn't have a bunch of new parts on there, you're probably, and you have trouble calibrating it, you're probably gonna need to just tell them, hey, we need to put new sensors on here, and then calibrate.
So Scott, the scary part is that the vehicle does not recognize that unit in the front is not pointing the right place.
Not for that manufacturer. GM, on the other hand, their sensor, if it's out of a certain angle tolerance, it sets a code. And it tells you how to calibrate it. You basically take a water level.
But it also disables the unit, correct?
Disables it, yeah.
Like an airplane.
Yeah. I don't know if it disables it on a key, if it re-enables it, I doubt it.
You mean recycling the key?
Yeah, but again,
Scott, when did the code record? Because if you were in the accident, could you have found out it was before or after?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that code was in the car before I even picked the car up. I'm sure that code was in there. I did not,
Does it have freeze frame data?
we recorded all the data, and actually, I gave this presentation, I put this presentation together the week after this happened. I was in Charlotte for ETI, the Equipment and Tool Institute, and at the NASDAQ general meeting, they asked, they had to have somebody canceled on a presentation, asked me if I had anything, and I said, yeah, I got something. So I gave this presentation, and after that presentation, the OEM from Nissan rep came up to me and said, I need all that data. And he got back to me. You know what he did? They went to Nissan, they went back, he says, when that car left the assembly floor, it was clean. So what does that tell me? They've got cameras and all this documentation on how those vehicles rolled off the line. And they
So
knew exactly
they're
what
gonna
it
have a
was.
production test for every single vehicle that runs off the line.
Say that again?
They're gonna have a production test.
Yeah.
They would have calibrated that and tested it, and they would
Yeah.
have those results of that test for every car.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if the thing is not working properly, they should have they should have.
No, but
Is that what was the factor?
So here's what I wanted to get into here. This is the last screen on this vehicle.
No, I agree.
So when I called up the national, I called up national, asked for the general manager at the airport there, and got her on the phone, explained to her what was going on. While she was on the phone, I said, can you look up service history on this vehicle? She looked it up, and I saw her looking through it. She says, all I have is one oil change, and she gave me the date and the mileage. I said, oh, okay, but this thing clearly had to have gone through an event.
Did you
So
do
then
it?
she went back and started looking at the rental periods before, and she identified one spot that there was a longer time period. So we assume that the vehicle probably had an event, the driver just took it upon themselves to get something done to the car, and then put the vehicle back,
Wow.
turn the vehicle back in.
Thing all over again.
Yeah, falling off the rack. Yeah, pretty scary. I mean, it really kind of pissed me off, right?
Scott,
I mean,
the fact that the sensor patterns don't look right even when you
even when it was
bend,
forward.
even
Yeah,
when it was forward, the system should probably figure that out.
probably.
Yeah.
But again, I think we're in our infancy here. The diagnostics were probably just not thought through. Look at the description on the DTC.
Yeah.
It says it's probably
Not to
temporary.
mention a one
But-
cycle.
But we're coming from a history of car diagnostics. These are not aircraft.
Yeah,
And so it's always been cost. And to keep the cost down, we don't have redundant sensors, we don't have redundant systems or anything like that. This is kind of a new thing where we're still under it seems like we're still kind of under that old cost model, but
yeah.
a new
And
system.
what I tell everybody, you know, when we do training, we talk about this stuff. If you read the owner's manual, you know, the owner's manual basically went through all the highest level of legal and everything else. It says you are ultimately responsible for the safe operation of this vehicle at all times, right? So it is not an autopilot, even though they call it autopilot. It's an aid. It's an assistance device.
Wow,
So-
come on, you're trying to tell me that these guys are ballsy, because if something like that happened, the attorneys would go after the manufacturers.
Truly right.
No other way around
Yeah,
it.
they go after them anyway.
Crazy. So here's another one. This is like the old school problems we've seen in the past, causing some interesting things. And this came into our shop about a month or so ago. And I had one of my apprentices, I was working with my apprentice to get this solved, and he was the guy that went with me to this ADAS training. And by the way said, and he's not really a master tech, he's more of an apprentice. He said, this stuff isn't that hard. You just have to follow directions and understand what you're doing and do the repairs. So here's a 27 Honda Accord came in, it's got 19,000 miles. The guy said, hey, the ACC and lane departure lights are illuminated. And this is what it said. It said adaptive cruise control problem. And it said road departure mitigation system problem, okay? So we go in and query the vehicle. It has one DTC, C0041. It says brake switch signal circuit error, okay?
Permanent too.
Well, we go in there, we look up trying to figure out what's the logic here. You know, usually you go into the service information and expect to see theory in operation, but you don't normally get that stuff anymore. It just says brake signal switch error. You know, if it's stored, it says if there's another DTC at the same time, do this. But right here, before you troubleshoot, review the general troubleshooting information. This is a good place to go to get orientation on these ADAS systems. So we went to that page, and we found all kinds of good information, but nothing about how this brake light switch operates and is part of the system, okay? So it goes through, it tells you what the multi-purpose camera does, and it uses inputs from the millimeter wave radar, right? Sensor fusion, all this stuff's going on here. So this is all really good training information that tells you about the aiming and all that good stuff, but that's not why we're here. So we go through, and I'm reading through the diagnostics because it first tells you to check the brake input, and if you don't see anything wrong, clear the code and send it out the door, or go drive it, or whatever. So I'm looking at this and it's saying, I notice it says pressing the brake pedal in 2 megapascals, okay? And what are the values? What are the values? So I go, let's pull up the pins for the brake, and let's start pushing on the brake, and we can see they change in states and stages, right? So there's a pre, and then there's another switch changed. And my tech took it out, and he drove it, and he said everything's working just fine. He couldn't find anything wrong with it. The switches, everything seems to work just fine. He takes it out, he records a video. It's engaged right now, so you can see the lines are actually all illuminated. Some cars will light those up green when you're in certain modes. This car doesn't do that, but he was verifying that it was, you know, keeping the lane, road testing it, everything's working just fine. So what do? We need to think about being crime scene investigators, right? We need to start thinking. So what did I do? I walk over to the car and I'm looking around and I see over passenger side of the car, there was a cane. And then I asked the service advisor, I said, is this an old guy? You know? He said, yeah, he's an old guy and he walks with a cane and all this stuff. And I said, he's not walking very far because he left his cane in the car. Then I asked my tech, I said, look at the brake pedal. What do you look at? Look at the left side of the brake pedal to see if he's using his left foot all the time? Sure as shoot. It was worn. So I told my tech, I said, all right, what I want you to do, put the scan tool on it. I want you to press the brake pedal enough to change the first state and go out and drive it. And he took it out and drove it. He came back and he was smiling. And he goes, watch this. So he's got it pushed slightly, okay? And he's driving and the lights came on. And we came back and it set the same DTC. So that's an old problem, now bringing up new symptoms, right? So,
2 foot driver.
yeah, 2 foot driver, okay.
It didn't say implausible in the signal, it just said brake light switch
Yep.
signal?
Yeah, that's all it said.
What brand is this?
Honda, 2017 Honda.
Only $9 available on
Yeah, at only $9 available. I hadn't heard that one yet.
So then what did you say to the customer? Stop driving with your left foot?
Yeah, exactly. It's a customer education opportunity.
Yeah, and how much did you charge him?
That was my question.
We charged them our diagnostics on it. I mean, it was a couple $100 for the
Yeah.
service. We solved his problem, right? We verified everything is working. We're not working for free. It doesn't, if you go out and look at my building, nowhere does it say nonprofit.
I love that.
Nonprofits collect money.
Right.
If we weren't recording this, I'd tell a joke.
We'll talk about that at the bar later. All right, so here's a couple of demos from my Tesla. And I want to show you, yes. Huh? Oh, question?
I was just gonna say, have you seen that situation on other manufacturers or like the high-end?
Not yet. Not yet. But I will tell you one quick story. While I was driving home from Vegas the other day, I stopped in Baker, all right? This couple pulled into the gas station there in a brand new BMW, high-end SUV. And I noticed it had the 3 cameras similar to what the Tesla has, had radar sensor and all that. So I asked the guy, hey, how's this system working? And he goes, oh my gosh, he says, if you have a slight curve in the road, this thing has a hell of a time staying in the lane. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, this thing, the adaptive cruise works okay, but the lane keeping and all that is just, it's
You shut it off?
Yeah, you can turn it off, but I mean, if you engage it, you're assuming it's gonna do the steering. Have you driven a Tesla? Anybody? You've driven one?
You have a
No?
Tesla though,
Yeah, I do.
right? Okay.
It's like on rails. I mean, it handles well. But anyways, I want to show you a couple of things that I've observed, because these cars don't always get it right. And this is a case where this one is not getting it right. You'll see that there's a single line here. That means that this vehicle is in navigate by autopilot. So I put in a destination, and it's basically figuring out what lane it needs to be in, when it needs to exit, when it needs to change lanes or what have you. But you'll watch, if you look here, that car right there is dark. This car here is also dark, okay? It thinks that this car is gonna cut in, and you'll watch the speed here rapidly decrease. Even though my lane is moving along at a nice clip, it just starts slowing me down, and it won't go past that vehicle. So here we are, 35, 36, and then boom. It's not going further past that vehicle, and you'll see I just matted the throttle here to get going. And that's where the drivers need to be aware of what's going on, and because if they could get piled into if they're moving along at a nice clip, and all of a sudden the car stops.
Well, that car had looked like a turn signal going.
It was the reflection in the lens.
Yeah, I think it was a reflection.
Yeah,
But,
well, it seemed to have picked it up.
Yeah, I don't think it saw that. I don't think it's looking at the turn signals. I mean, he would probably know, but he couldn't tell us anyway.
You have to kill us.
But that was more of a false positive.
Like I said, we don't know anything about the Tesla software, so it's the same as everybody else. Nobody shares their software.
So here's one. This is with some newer software. Again, over-the-air updates. Get them all the time. Don't need a JBox, right?
No.
So here I'm just in regular cruise control with lane keeping engaged right here. And I'm gonna initiate a right lane change. I'm just gonna hit the turn signal lever to go to the right lane and watch what happens. So turn signal's on. It paints the line. It shows where it wants to land the car. It waited for that car to go by, and it did all of that all by itself. It's pretty damn slick. Pretty slick. So here is another one.
85?
Nice,
Yeah.
You weren't in LA.
That's it. That's actually in metric.
It's really
That's in
No,
kilometers.
Yeah,
it says MPH. Nice
We're
try.
not full try.
I think, I think the NVIDIA guys would have got it right, but
It
Tesla
was
probably
for
messed
test
it up, right?
purposes for everybody.
They said engineers screw up all the time. Right? So,
They make
could be an
money.
anomaly, right?
Yeah.
So here, I'm going down to San Diego, and this is in now by autopilot. It says, I need to get in the next lane. It lit up the lane momentarily. See, it's got that gray line in the center, and then it moved me over to a faster lane. It's looking at my speed, it's looking at the vehicle speed in front, and it says, hey, I'm gonna move you to a faster lane.
So stay with traffic. On its own?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. What's that?
On its own? You didn't?
On its own, yeah, it did all that by itself. It basically, what it does, it makes a little sound, it has a haptic feedback in the steering wheel, and then the turn signal starts clicking, and then it just does its thing. Now, it doesn't get it right every time. I just drove that car up to Vegas, and it chickened out on about 5 lane changes. It got over and it was getting nervous, and then it just went.
Never mind.
Are you
And
sure
I'm
you
going, I
weren't
just shut
drinking?
it off, I took over, you know,
You
so.
can override it.
Yeah, I just took over and made it happen.
Does
So
it-
here's the very last one right here. This is going on the 210, 210 north of it's a 210 as it goes north from Pasadena.
Pasadena.
Okay, there's this heavy, dense tunnel that you're going through, okay? This demonstrates how dependent they are on navigation by autopilot on GPS, okay? So before we enter this tunnel, there's gonna be a message popping up, and it starts counting down how many feet until navigate by autopilot is no longer available. It goes into just navigating by the lines.
So it loses
And then
the
after
signal.
we exit the tunnel, it resumes. So this all happens all by itself. So here we are, you're gonna see that message pop up. Right there, navigate by autopilot, unavailable in 400 feet, 300 feet, 200, 100, and then boom, it went off. We're going into the tunnel. That's a pretty dense tunnel.
Yeah, it is.
And then watch, it'll close back up, and then away you go. So, pretty cool. Yeah. So that's all the fun. Thank you guys very much. Any questions? We're finished with 5 minutes left. Yes, sir.
On that story that you said, the car checking out and being back.
Yeah.
In San Francisco with a bunch of, traffic, this car was had all those cameras on top, going in and out, and the people didn't know what to do, because people, when you try to go to that lane, people were going to try to cut it, it would come back and it was a mess.
So this is on like a car that has NVIDIA on the side of it?
Wow.
Oh, it's just one of those test cars.
That is not done
I thought you were
with the
friends.
cameras, and it's all with LiDAR and radar and stuff.
I don't know what that car was.
Yeah,
Good cars.
there's a bunch of cameras on top of that.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Quick question on the beginning of your presentation with the equipment.
Yes.
Is this going to be available for leasing, so you can update every year as they progress? Instead of actually purchasing it and stuck with it, can you?
What software is updating?
I have no idea.
Well, even if you
You're
lease it,
gonna
Rob.
you're gonna want to use the latest software. This is not where you want to use old service information, old software. You're gonna want to stay here. Yeah.
Are you getting
Well,
stuck
a lot of times you're licensing the software, so it's a recurring model. And again, that's how a lot of software companies work today. For them to keep developing the software, they need to have recurring revenues so they can make the product better. And by the way, when I was in Vegas, I went to a company called Aptiv up there in Vegas, who actually has all the Lyft taxis in town. They have, if you have a Lyft account here in Las Vegas, when you request a car, it'll have a message saying you want an autonomous vehicle. I would recommend answering yes, and you'll get a pretty cool experience.
Oh, wow.
There's a